Tales from the Storm, the first step. The mood in the Flame's carriage was worthy of a wake. While pretending to gaze out at the parched landscape of southern Vanenland, the youth tried in vain to think of something to say. Across from him sat the Grand Company's recently formed summoner squad, the doughty souls charged with combating primal threats, none of whom had said a word since their departure. Silently he rehearsed an opening line. So, you lot brave, or stupid, or both? Although he and his had been dispatched to render aid in this mission, they had yet to establish a rapport with the soldiers, and he was determined to break the ice. My name's Arenveld Lentinus, he eventually managed, and when no response was forthcoming, he added, So, you lot, fight primals often? At this, the Lalafellan summoner sitting opposite shrugged wordlessly. Why do I bother? But then the woman next to him took pity and replied, As often as circumstances warrant, I suppose. Crispin and I have battled Ifrit 4 times now, she said, gesturing at the third summoner, who gamely accepted the conversational baton. Though our experience pales in comparison to the lieutenant's, Jeja Samu is formerly of the Company of Heroes. He faced the Lord of Crags and lived. Ah, so he's the dab hand. The lieutenant glanced at him briefly before looking away again, indifferent, probably wondering why you're riding with a pair of young nobodies. Veterans then, that's a relief. I'll try not to get underfoot. As soon as the words had left his mouth, he regretted playing the part. Useless bloody whelps, if you value your life, you'll do 2 things, watch and learn. Jejasamu snapped before resuming his pre-battle ritual of ignoring one and all. So that's the way it's gonna be, eh? Arenveld stifled a sigh and forced a smile as he glanced sidelong at his fellow whelp, praying to the 12 that she wouldn't make matters worse. But if the lieutenant's words had struck a nerve, she didn't show it. Her eyes were closed, her face devoid of all tension, the very picture of serenity, the calm before the storm. Maybe the 2 of them have the right of it. Accepting defeat, Arenveld abandoned his brilliant plan to prevent the squad before the battle, and instead cast his mind back to the circumstances that had led him to share a carriage with the summoners and Fordola Lupus. Fate and the Scions had conspired to bring him back to Alamigo, his homeland, and it was there that they had first met, as mortal enemies on the battlefield. The same age, the same birthplace, and yet somehow they had come to lead such different lives. He, the half-breed spawn of a Garlean soldier cast out by his mother, had left Girabania and become an adventurer, while she, a pure-blood daughter of Alamigo, had been gifted an imperial education and taken up arms against her own countrymen. Yet for everything we strove to escape, to deny, our paths led us here. As a scion, he had earned the respect of the Resistance and the Alamigan people, whereas she, as a traitor and a kinslayer, had earned their scorn. Only death would answer death, they believed, nor, perhaps, were they wrong. And then came the day they stood on the same side of a battlefield. Representatives had gathered from all across Girabania to discuss the future of Alamigo, only for proceedings to be plunged into chaos by Ananta treachery. Sri Lakshmi, summoned by the Kalyana, would have bound all present to her will, were it not for the intervention of the Warrior of Light, Arenveld, and Fordola. It's done. Take me back to my cell. With those words, Fordola had thrown down the sword Lise Hext put in her hands when the former scion had challenged the hated butcher to take her own life, as Xenos had, or use her newfound powers for a noble purpose. Arenveld watched them lead her away, watched as they once more debated the fate of his kinswoman and her fellow collaborators. In the end, it was Rauban who had proffered the solution: conscription. A new unit in which some convicts might serve out their sentence instead of in a cell or at the end of a rope. Though others were extended the offer, it was plain who they wanted most. Fordola had proven herself capable of withstanding primal influence. Her abilities as a resonant, coupled with her combat expertise, made her an invaluable asset in a never-ending war against the primals. A weapon, she agreed. Out of the carriage! Let's go! Let's go! The words of the Rugadin captain riding with the coachman dragged Arenveld back to present. With practiced precision, the summoners grabbed their gear and disembarked, forming a line before their superior. Arnveld followed suit. As you know, yesterday, Master Coltonay of the Scions informed us of an etheric disturbance in the vicinity of the Zanrak altar. Said disturbance can almost certainly be attributed to a primal summoning. The captain walked up and down the line, searching his soldiers' faces. Luckily for us, we've got ourselves a couple of secret weapons. Arnvald felt their eyes upon him and Verdola. Arnvald of the Scions and Verdola of the Resistance, echo blessed, the both of them, so no need to worry about them getting tempered. That said, I'm obliged to divulge certain details regarding the latter. He saw their faces darken as they listened, their eyes narrow, their bodies tense. Verdola cocked her head and chuckled. If I was going to stab you, it'd be from the front, not the back. But don't worry, you little heads, my neck's still in the hangman's noose. She taps the gem-inlaid choker below her chin with 2 fingers. You can trust in words, or you can trust in magic. If the Resistance Thaumaturge's task of keeping an eye on Verdola was so inclined, he could trigger the enchantment woven into the neckpiece, causing it to gradually grow warmer and tighter, slowly searing her skin as it choked the life from her. Rather you than me. A proper hanging and snap your neck at least. The captain cleared his throat and continued. Given their talents, we'll have them hold Ifrit at bay, while their summoner squad engages at range with Edgy and magics. You'll have healers as support, as well as the girl's minder. I'll be directing the diversionary maneuvers to the south. Any questions? Right then. They left the Forgotten Springs en masse and ventured a few miles east into the Segolii, before Captain Wolf and his contingent peeled off to lay siege to a nearby Amalja encampment, providing the summoner squad with the distraction they needed to head north towards the Zanrak altar undetected. Arnvald then led the way through a narrow canyon, clinging to the shadows some 50 yalms ahead of the party. Spying an oblivious sentry, he gestured for his comrades to stop, and slowly drew his dagger. Wiping the blade clean, he looked back and signaled the others to join him. As one, they continued north towards the altar, where they found, as they had feared, a ring of flame, and a Lord of the Inferno waiting at its heart. Even in the aftermath, he struggled to remember the fight. The primal had been summoned with a token quantity of crystals, and Arnveld had not felt a fraction as hard-pressed as he had during the battle with Sri Lakshmi. The summoners and healers had all performed admirably, a victory won on the training ground, not the battlefield. We're finished here. All units, withdraw. At Captain Wolf's command, they set out to return the way they had come. Advance no further. Arnveld was already diving the moment he heard the scream. Peering out from cover, he saw a figure in the dirt clutching an arrow in his gut, its black iron point protruding obscenely from his back. Amalja. Stay put and stay quiet. Leave the fighting to me and Auli. Enemy archers, West Ridge! Get behind those rocks! Arnveld closed his eyes, took a breath, and counted to 4. Shafts were raining down all around them now. Raising his shield, he broke and ran towards the summoners to help defend their retreat, and passed Verdola sprinting in the opposite direction, swords flashing as he danced through a hail of arrows. I knew it! I knew she'd run! Jajasamu bellowed with a hint of triumph. Alarm bells ringing in his head, Arnveld looked back and saw she was headed for the wounded soldier, a resistance man, the thaumaturge. But just as Arnveld felt his stomach drop into his boots and the grip of his sword dig deep into his palm, he saw Verdola pull the mage to his feet and offer him her shoulder. And then Arnveld was running again, this time into the open, his silver armor flashing in the sunlight as he shouted curses and threw stones at the archers on the ridge, daring them to face him. After a time, the arrows subsided, and the archers vanished from sight. Better to leave the madman be, eh? For a moment, he let himself relax. Keep your guard up, boy! Arnveld caught the first arrow on his shield and drew his sword in time to cut down the second and third. Sorry, Abba, he whispered. The archer, a hulking brute of an Amalja wearing a mask, took careful aim. Bugger it! With a cry, he raised his shield and charged, closing the gap and driving his full weight into his ill-prepared foe. As the archer staggered backward, Arnveld raised his sword and brought it down, cleaving his enemy's bow in two as he raised it in a vain attempt to ward off the blow. The Amalja crumpled to the earth, and the surrounding sand grew dark and wet. The silence was deafening, and Arnveld knew the champion's comrades had been watching. Bloody hells, that was the stupidest display of heroism I've seen in years, and they wonder why I hate the young ones. Muttering under his breath, the summoner bade his familiar return to him. As the floating mass of rock passed Ironveld, he saw the masked Amelja's final arrow was lodged squarely in his breast. The mood in the flames' carriage was worthy of a name-day feast. The summoners all smiles as they chatted amongst themselves and even laughed at some of Ironveld's jokes. Verdola sat apart from it all, elbows on knees, head bowed, though the Scion thought he spied Jetasamu giving her an appraising look. Before they had set out, Ironveld had been with her when the thaumaturge wandered over. She had been kneeling in the sand, packing up her gear, when he asked why she had risked her life to save his. "Little girls need their fathers," was all she said, before tightening a final strap and boarding the carriage. The man had turned to him then, his face a picture of perplexity. "I never said anything about having a daughter." To which Ironveld could only shrug and smile. Lucky guess. It all begins with the first step. Thank you for listening to Tales from the Storm, The First Step.